Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I decided to sit on the wrong side today.
You threw me off.
Sorry, we were running a little behind. We had a slight coffee maker emergency in the office.
It seems as though you have to put the filter in the right place.
You do. Yep. So when we were just talking about this, I think pretty much that was my common practice to get that coffee maker wrong almost every time. when I first got here, I was always running the coffee maker over in lots of different places, which is weird because I drink a lot of coffee, so you would think that I would know how the coffee maker works, but
it is kind of weird because I drink a lot of coffee too, and I make my own coffee every night and set the timer on the coffee maker at home, but on that one, you just pull out the little thing, put the filter in, and then put the grounds in, and it's ready to go. So that's what I did with this one. Yeah. But there's another piece that has to go in there.
Yeah, there's another little extra step that you have to take. And I think when I was getting it wrong, literally every other time, I think I wasn't putting it all the way down in the I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, there's a little plunger in there
But I've done that at home too, where it's really dangerous for me when I set it the night before. I will walk by the coffee maker 4 or 5 times and make sure the pot is all the way under there because I've walked out a few times 30 minutes later after the timer went off and coffee is just everywhere.
It's interesting. That's probably an illustration that could be used about not leaving out steps.
Yes. Yeah.
God gives us instructions that are important to use, and sometimes we don't want to do all the steps, and it just doesn't work well when we leave out the steps,
or when you do the steps in the wrong order.
That's true.
So this is cutting into my sermon, I think. So now I have so this week, this coming Sunday, we're going to be reading 2 John, and man, it's been. I'm working for this one. I'm working.
Still looking for material.
Just working. Yeah. Well, we're gonna in a few minutes. We're gonna talk about. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place. In a few minutes, we're gonna talk about something that kind of didn't make the cut for Sunday, and I'll explain a little bit about that. In a minute. But before we talk about some things from 1 John chapter 5, Joe came into my office this morning after he got here and said, hey, there's just some things kind of I watched a podcast. Here are some things that are kind of on my mind. And so Joe, what have you been listening to lately? So what's on your mind today?
I was listening to a podcast earlier this morning, and it's a podcast that my daughter gave to me, quite a while ago. There's a young couple that does a podcast. It's the podcast is called, I wrote it down because I wanted to get it right, because I've enjoyed it since I've started listening to it, and it's Behind the Scenes with Jeremy and Audrey Roloff. I hope I said their names right.
Okay.
And this is episode 82, actually, and it's Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad with John Eldredge. And Jeremy was interviewing John Eldredge in this podcast this morning. And they were...
Okay, say the name of the podcast one more time.
It's called Behind the Scenes
with
Jeremy and Audrey Roloff, Roloff.
Okay. Roloff. So if you have so I'm going to try and do this, and I don't know why I'm going to do this because I'm sure it's not going to nearly work as well as I think it was. If you're looking for this podcast, just type in Behind the Scenes, and it will look like.
Yep, that's
it. It will look like that. Behind the Scenes with Jeremy and Audrey Roloff. Okay.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's a young couple, and they talk about things going on in their family life.
Okay.
And go to the scripture a lot in it, and talk about goofs that they've made, and how God has helped them work through those things, and how they're Their marriage has grown stronger through the years, and so it's been really good. But this one, for some reason or other, well, Jeremy mentioned how this particular book, actually the Wild in Heart book, that a lot of men will recognize, and some women, because it's good for women to read it too, that John Eldredge wrote, was so beneficial in his life and in his marriage. And so when John wrote this latest book of Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad, Jeremy said, I got to have him on and interview him. And so they were talking about this wacky, crazy world that we're living in, and how even before the COVID is when John Eldredge wrote this, and it's really about we're so busy, and we're involved in so many things, and we listen to podcasts, and we look at social media, and one of the first things we do when we get up in the morning is probably grab our phone and look at it to see if there's any messages and things like that, and how Jeremy was talking about how he and his wife have discovered that they become so busy that they realized they needed to cut some things out of their life, and some of that was the amount of podcasts they did, and it was good stuff that they were doing, but they'd become so busy that they needed to cut it out. And so part of the topic that John Eldredge discusses in this book is that very thing. How do we cope with the busyness in our life? And it was an awesome discussion. I would encourage you to go back and watch episode 82 from that podcast. But one of the things that John Eldredge said that just jumped out at me this morning was, Jeremy had asked him, how can we address this on a daily basis? And John Eldredge said 60 seconds. And Jeremy says 60 seconds. And then John says, 60 seconds. Pause for 60 seconds. And he said, when you pause, you are making room for God.
Okay.
And I thought that is a profound statement. We need to take time periodically throughout our day. He said once a day, twice a day, but I think it's a good exercise to do, to stop and acknowledge God, even if we just do it for 60 seconds. And when you sit still for a minute, it seems like a long time. But and he said two things happen. You become aware of yourself, and you become aware of God. And what I think why that jumped out at me so much is because I've always been one to encourage people to seek God. And that's one of the prayers I pray for my kids every day, is that they would seek God and know that He is with them and sense His presence and have a desire to live for Him. Everything they do and say, that they would do it for Him. And yet I'm so busy that oftentimes I don't pause in my schedule just to be aware of His presence. And I thought that's something I want to put in my schedule.
Sure.
Something I'm doing this weekend is I am going away on my motorcycle for the weekend. And I'm not going alone, but it's something that I've done. This will be the third year in a row now, where my son in Lamar is organizing a benefit ride for a camp down at Como, Colorado. And what we do is we go down on Thursday, we stay overnight on Thursday, then we get up on Friday, have breakfast, and we go out and ride in the mountains for a day. And then we do that again on Saturday. And at night we have a devotion and some worship time together, and there'll be about between 30 and 40 people there. But when you're out on the motorcycle, and sometimes I'll do that here, you can't hear anything other than the rattle of the motor. And you can't talk on the phone. You can't look at the phone. I mean, you can look at it. I've got a mount on there that will notify me if I turn the wrong way, if I'm traveling or whatever.
Sure.
But lots of times around here, I'll hop on and ride for 25, 30 minutes just to spend time with God. And I think that's what John was talking about.
Yeah.
We don't have to get on a motorcycle to do that. We can pause for 60 seconds and experience His presence and acknowledge His presence.
It's so. I'm gonna make a connection to a conversation we had yesterday. In our elders meeting yesterday morning, we were talking about the kind of evangelism, and then we started talking about what's the purpose of our 10-15 gathering.
Yeah.
Is it to evangelize? So is it to bring non-Christians in so that they'll hear the gospel? Is it to the Christian word that we use is edify, which means build up. Is it meant to build up and edify and equip our believers so they go out and make disciples? And so I would argue the answer is both. So that's another conversation.
I would say the answer is yes.
But then we very quickly started talking about, I don't remember how it came up, but Dave Robinson, one of our elders, he used the phrase spiritual disciplines.
Yeah.
And he said things like reading our Bibles and praying. I think he said fasting.
And meditating.
Meditating.
On His word. Yeah.
And what you're talking, when we were talking, I didn't tell you this morning. But when you were sharing this morning, and then when you just now shared, some of the spiritual disciplines that we don't talk much about. Well, fasting is one of them, but also the spiritual disciplines of silence, which is the 60 seconds, and then the spiritual discipline of solitude, which is being by ourselves.
Yeah.
And both of those things, silence and solitude, are very difficult in the age. Well, we make them difficult in the age in which we live.
That's why they call it a discipline.
Yeah.
It's something that we have to intentionally do.
Yeah. Silence. Yeah. Silence requires me to put this aside, turn it off, put it in airplane mode, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's funny because on Sunday mornings, one of the things I do right before I go up front to speak is I put my phone in airplane mode and I put my iPad in airplane mode. Because one of the things that, and it's all in good fun, but one of the things that's happened in the past is my small group sometimes can talk. They not only talk about what's going on in the sermon, but they talk about me during the sermon. And I get all of these little notifications that pop up. But also, even when that doesn't happen, I put it off because my kids there could be all sorts of distractions.
Oh yeah.
So those, those practices, those disciplines are really important. And it's interesting, as soon as we were done with our elders meeting yesterday morning, I think I went into the staff room, or maybe I did it during our staff meeting. I went into the staff room where we have this big whiteboard for 2021 of what our preaching calendar looks like, and it just says possible suggestions or possible topics, and I wrote the phrase spiritual disciplines on there. And I started looking for a book that talks about spiritual disciplines, which I'm missing. So I don't know why I'm missing that book. I have the workbook, but I don't have the other book. So if I have lent you a book called Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life by Donald S. Whitney, I would love that book. So if you have my book, I need it because that's going to make the cut. And I thought Joe had it.
I checked my shelves. I don't have it.
I thought Joe had it. He was my go-to. Do you have this book? He does not. So if you have my copy of Spiritual Disciplines of the Christian Life, it's time for you to give it back. Because I think that's going to be something that we talk about in 2021. But yes, Silence and Solitude. You said something like we discover who we are and we discover who God is.
Yeah.
Would you read that? What was it again?
You become aware of yourself, and you also become aware of God. So, what does that mean?
Well, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Like, I know for me, and maybe this is just my experience, or maybe it's only me, but I don't think it is. I think some of we've been talking about assurance of salvation over the last 6 weeks, and we have a couple more weeks to go. I know I've experienced this, and I'm sure then for other people, like the thought of being alone, it just left to your own devices and what's going on in your mind and in your heart and in your soul, like that can be really scary.
Yeah, you use the word in your soul. That's part of the topic that John addresses in this book, and I'd like to read, if I could, just a second.
Sure.
It's from the intro to that book, because I hadn't read the book yet.
Okay.
And when they talked about it this morning in the conversation they were having, it challenged me. I went and got it on Kindle, and in the intro it says, "I'm guessing you've experienced something." Well, let me back up. I realized it wasn't a failure of love or compassion. These were symptoms of a soul pushed too hard, strung out, haggard, fried. My soul just can't do life at the speed of smartphones. But I was asking it to. Everybody's asking theirs to. Interesting phrase. I'm guessing you've experienced something similar. It's likely why you've picked up this book. Your soul is looking for something. Are you aware of what it is? And then he says, how would you score your soul these days? Are you happy most of the time? How often do you feel lighthearted? Are you excited about your future? Do you feel deeply loved? When was the last time you felt carefree? Kind of an indication, and he talked about those things this morning, and I'm thinking, wow, sometimes we have to stop and be aware of us.
Yeah.
And our condition. And I think right now in our world, in the issues that are going on around us, I think that's what I was mentioning when I came in this morning is there's so much going on in our lives right now with the changes and the issues that we see in the world all over, that it's easy to get run down.
And what's the name? First up, what was the name of this book again?
It's called Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad.
Okay.
That's actually the small print. The big print. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick.
Okay, so Everyday Practices for a World Gone Mad.
Yeah, get your life back.
Okay.
That's the big words on the front of it.
Okay, so John Eldredge, Get Your Life Back.
Get your life back. Now, I haven't read it, so I can't recommend it, really, other than what I heard this morning. But
well, I think I think what you were just saying, like, does our soul function at the speed of our smartphones? Like, I mean, just generally, and I know I've talked a lot about this, and maybe you're sick of hearing me talk about it. I'm not sick of talking about it, so I think our devices require us to take in so much information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like we feel like we have to know everything about everything all the time. And we're not designed for that. And just while you were talking, like I was just thinking of, I'm trying to remember which Bible Project series it was. I think it might have been on. They did one at the end of the year on trees, and I think they were talking about the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah,
and one of the concepts that they were talking about in this podcast was how mankind is not designed to have all knowledge.
Right.
So and I'm going to just really paraphrase what they were talking about in this podcast. But what Eve wanted was the quick route to wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah.
She wanted to, what's the? I'm just gonna find it now. Like I don't know. Whoever's watching this, I know you've heard Genesis 3.
The temptation was that Satan used to get Eve to taste the fruit is you will become like God.
Yeah, knowing both good and evil.
Yeah.
And what God wanted was for them to be in relationship with Him and learn wisdom and knowledge relationally.
Yes.
Rather than absent relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really easy for us to be in these spots where, like, we have to know, like, we know everything, but we really don't learn anything.
Right. Yeah.
I just think of all of the information that we are constantly being bombarded with. Did you hear about this? Did you know this? All of these things that we have to know,
Mm-hmm.
and that mindset of I wake up in the morning and I check my device. It very much is a kind of like a what did I miss? I wonder what I missed,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can have the most knowledge, the most wisdom, so that like whatever. I think there's a lot of things that go on
Mm-hmm.
in that for us, and yeah, I mean we are not designed. We are not designed to know everything.
Yeah. 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 They made another. Somebody had done research on what the human person was capable of. How many relationships is a human person capable of? A human capable of having, and it was something like 131.
Okay,
is what they figured. And you think about how many people are you friends with on Facebook, and how many can you really be in relationship with?
right.
And when you get to a certain point, your body goes, I can't.
Right.
Because it knows it can't.
Yeah.
But we have a desire to have more. And so there's that struggle within us in that.
Mm-hmm.
There's one more thing that they said this morning, and I went back and listened to it so I could quote it. It's from C.S. Lewis. It says, "Woe is the man who can't stop and stare as the cows do."
Mm.
And I thought, there's something about that.
Mm-hmm.
The old farmer in me is used to seeing the cows out there standing in the corner chewing on their cud, just staring away.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the person that can't take time just to experience God?
Yeah, I know for me, this is kind of over the last couple of years. I mean, we moved here about 3.5 years ago, and I remember so many times, like as a runner, like I would go out and run, and I would never, or I would rarely, like take time to enjoy what I was seeing.
It's a mechanical motion.
Yeah, and just over, and I especially since living here, like I shouldn't even say often. Sometimes on Sunday mornings, my run is I drive up to the parking lot at the monument, and I run up and I run down the monument. That's what I would like to be my Sunday practice, and I do probably once a month is when I do that. And I've learned like over the past couple years, like it's okay to stop and like take in what I'm seeing. It's okay to and usually what I'll do then is I'll take a picture. So maybe I should or shouldn't do that, but I'm stopping and I'm like taking in what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And I think it can be really easy for us to get caught up in ourselves, to get caught up in all of the things that are going on around us, that we don't take time actually to see what's going on around us.
Yeah.
We don't look at nature, and that's like Romans 1 is all about my love language. But I know that I haven't taken time in the past to do that, to see how God is at work, and that requires that we slow down.
Yeah.
And like those quotes you shared, and like we've already said, like we don't live in an age where slowing down is really a good thing.
It's not encouraged.
Yeah.
That's why I look forward to this ride this weekend so much, is because even though I'm moving, when I'm moving, I'm watching and experiencing His beauty, His graciousness, and I see it in so many ways. The mountains obviously is an easy place to focus on that, but it's also the people that I see, the difference in them, the mode that they're in. I love going to the airport and sitting and watching people go by, and the busyness that they're in. I like it when I have a layover. My wife hates it, but I love it because I love to sit and watch people and to think about the creation that God has. And each one is unique and wonderfully made. And so am I. And I need to pause and experience that. For me, I'm with you. My love language is getting out into the nature. I love doing that. I love going up into the hills and hiking and hunting. I don't get much when I hunt because I sit and I'm looking at the wrong things and making too much noise. But I think we need to do that from time to time and be intentional in that.
So now 24 hours in, I think spiritual disciplines are going to make the cut for next year.
So. Yeah.
And those, especially those ones about silence and solitude, like those are important things. So, so you never. So you told me this, but you haven't shared it on here. Did you? You did not talk about the 60 seconds, did you? Did you talk?
Yeah,
about
I did.
60 seconds?
Right at the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. So my phone is not showing any picture. I'm confident because someone said, "Hey, you guys are on," but my phone isn't. So that's what I was playing with early. So I think the challenge then today is to twice take 60 seconds and just be.
Yeah. Experience God. However that may be, and John says you can get an app. I don't know what it's called, but you could probably look up John Eldridge, and it helps you to do that in 60 seconds. Okay. It doesn't cost anything. It's a free app. I didn't look for that, but it has to do with just saying a little prayer, something to the effect of, Jesus, I want to know you, or I want to see you, or experience you, and sit there for 60 seconds. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're actually not going to read anything from 1 John 5 because we technically didn't get a question. And the answer to the question, I think, would be kind of a pretty big letdown. So since no one has asked, we are not going to talk about the sin that leads to death and why not every sin doesn't lead to death. So we're not going to talk about that today.
I even had scriptures, and we'll probably have to come back to it.
Well, you know what? If you don't ask, we don't do it. So I think that's a great place to close. Is just a challenge of finding 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So why don't we take 60 seconds? And I'm gonna find my little stopwatch here or my timer and set it for 1 minute. And a couple weeks ago on the morning psalm that I did, it was one of the psalms where the repeat is His love endures forever.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
I know some of
you.
you.
His mercy and
it was something like that. And what we did was I said, hey, I want you guys. I have no way of knowing whether or not you're going to do this, but I'm going to read this and let's just all say this together. And I don't know if you did or not. So I think what we'll do is I'm just going to hit start. And what I would love for you guys to do right now is just close your eyes. And we'll just take 60 seconds. My timer will go off. I'll let you know when it's up, I promise. Why don't we just take 60 seconds and just be still and be silent for 60 seconds. So go ahead and close your eyes, and then I'll hit my timer.
So, John, as that time was going, where did your thoughts go?
Honestly, nowhere. It was just silent. It was nice to. I could hear the hum of the lights.
Yep, I heard that too. Yep.
And it was just nice to not do anything.
You know, as I was sitting here, my stomach was growling, and I thought, wow, God gave me a system that works in such an amazing way.
Mm-hmm.
I heard the lights humming, and I thought about this room and the facility that He's giving us to get together with other people in. And
when's the last time you thought about the system that God gave you to process food?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I heard the murmur of...
I heard Jim's voice
of
too.
Jim, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just said, thank you, Lord, for the wonderful leadership that we have. He's one of the elders here. So I think when we're silent... When I was listening to the podcast this morning, the scripture came to my mind, be still and know that I am God. And also when David... Or was it the prophet
Elijah?
Elisha.
I was thinking about that earlier.
Yeah. When God said, go and wait for me.
Yeah.
And it was in the still small voice that he experienced God. I think that's kind of what this is about. What that's about is pausing from our busyness and listening.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be audible listening or whether it be our soul listening. And I think we discover ourselves too in that, in interesting ways. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do that.
Okay. Good plan. Hey, thanks for watching today. We like doing this, and it's a good way to connect. Good way to hear what each one of us are currently listening to, reading, or watching, or whatever. It's good conversation. So today, take 60 seconds, and I love that. Like as those things enter, So what do I do when those things happen? When my stomach growls, like what am I going to do? That's really interesting. Okay, cool. Thanks for watching. We love you guys, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. We are going to talk about the book of 2 John on Sunday. It will do you well to read it before Sunday, and then be ready for us to talk about it. So thanks for watching.
I'm going to pray for you that you will experience His presence in this way. Yeah, that it will challenge you to seek Him more. That's what I want.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
See ya.